Hey, welcome back to part two of this chapter two segment. Um, in the economic segment, there's a litany of economic indicators that we use for forecasting. Obviously, we're looking at growth. We're looking at things like the U.S. Institute of Supply Management's prediction for growth to try and determine where we should forecast sales, how we should set the next year up in terms of its sales, its budgets, its strategies, etc., along with all these other indicators you see. So when we look at a global perspective, what are we looking at? Well, we're trying to figure out our forces of competition for sure, which set pricing. We're looking at tariffs. We're looking at currency and exchange rates. We're looking at an opportunity to possibly subsource offshore. All kinds of different things in that mix to determine what the offshore could look like for us. Okay, let's take a look at what happens when some of these different elements overlap each other. Crowdsourcing is a great example. It's a combination of technology and people. We can take crowdsourcing, which is virtually the use of large crowds on the internet, and we can use those people to help us make business decisions and to solve problems. And where this came from and where this stemmed from was basically from early 2000s when we were looking for ways to cut costs, and we were looking for a way to reinvent a low-cost marketing opportunity, a low-cost creative, a low-cost solution to solving problems. And this is a good example of where things can, when they converge, they can create a new product or a new idea. So, what are the things that are in the competitive environment? Well, there are many, all right? Obviously, there's competitors, and we want to get to know them really well, and we've discussed that already. There's also customers or buyers or potential customers or buyers. There's people in the adjacent markets to our customers that we may also want to entertain doing business with. So there's many people out there that are on our horizon in that competitive environment. There's also suppliers. It's very important to have a really good handle on what suppliers exist, what opportunities exist with different suppliers, particularly when we're talking about pricing, quality, delivery. Great suppliers generally have ideas that may be able to leapfrog us further. It's real important that we study all of these things to have a good business strategy. Well, let's take a good look at Porter's five forces model. I could do an entire presentation on this particular model, but a lot of this has to do with these different items or things that cause competition. All right, we have industry competitors in general. We have suppliers, we have buyers, we have substitutes within the industry. That means maybe we don't need this particular product, we can substitute it out for something else. We have potential entrants. Here are some of the basics about this model. All right, if the threats to entry are low, in general, you're going to have a lot of competitors. Industries where we have low entry levels, like the restaurant industry, it doesn't take a lot of money to put together to own a restaurant. You have lots of people trying to get into that, so you have a lot of competitors. What does that do? Well, in general, it can drive the price down, it can drive your profits down, competition up, right? So in industries where there's a real high threshold for entry, like aeronautics, let's say, Boeing, you don't have very many players. You don't have very many competitors. It's an oligopoly market. So guess what? There's not a lot of competition. Prices are really high. Profitability is really high. You have sustained profits. It's a wonderful thing. Okay, so that's just two ways of looking at this in two different axioms. When there's a lot of substitutes that can take place, again, A lot of competition there. Aeronautic industry, not a lot of substitutes for airplanes. Okay. Restaurant industry, tons of substitutes, right? Drives the price down, more competitive. Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit and we'll start talking about threats and new entrants. Well, threats and new entrants, like we said earlier, are barriers to entry, let's call it. Okay? If we have low barriers to entry, we have high threats of new entrants. Okay? The biggest threat or barrier to entry is cost. So, and the example I used before with the restaurants, when you have a low cost market like the restaurant industry, for example, maybe the car wash industry, you see a lot of those on the street today. Those are low cost, low barrier entry businesses. And what are you going to have? You're going to have lots of threats of new entrants. You're going to have a lot of competition. It's going to drive your pricing. It's going to drive your profits. Okay? Oftentimes, in these particular types of markets, it's really difficult to differentiate your product unless it's a completely new market, because a lot of it's already been done. So you have to have a unique set of circumstances that could give you more than average profits than a sustained period of time. But that's the 411 on threat of new entrants. Low barriers to entry like cost, high threat of new entrants. Okay, let's talk for a minute about the bargaining power of buyers. Well, this gets pretty interesting. The bargaining power of buyers is fundamental to essentially how reproducible a product that they're trying to buy is, or how substitutable it is. So, for example, spent 20 years in the plastics and automotive industry. All right, so there's an injection molder on just about every street corner, unfortunately. So buyers from Ford, GM, Chrysler, Honda, Toyota, etc., they had it made. It was easy to drive prices and costs down and quality up and value added activities and secondary activities up, because there was so much competition. There was a overcapacity in the market. So it was real easy for these OEM companies to call their own pricing. All right? Well, that's not the same in other markets. I'm going to flip right over to aerospace again. In the aerospace industry, you have a lot of specialized, proprietary, unique products that are technically leveraged that cannot be substituted. When that happens, it's really hard for buyers to command their own price, call their own shots. So this is about control. When a buyer has a lot of control, he can drive his prices down. When a buyer doesn't, and you're in a unique situation where you need the supplier more, he doesn't have the ability to call his own pricing. All right? Backward integration simply means, hey, if I want to basically make my product instead of buy it, that's always a threat. And where is that threat at the most? Where you have what? Low barriers of entry, low technical product. Okay, further to the example I gave in the last segment, suppliers can exert their own pressure. Okay? When suppliers have unique product, proprietary product, this is also very pervasive in the medical industry, where it's highly patented, highly copyrighted, lots of proprietary product. Suppliers have a lot of control and they have a lot of power. When they have control, they can raise their prices, they can extend their deliveries. This is all part of this model of competition. We're always trying to determine who's really in control, buyers suppliers. Okay. Oftentimes, there is a tilt, and what I'm saying is, it's often not a balance of power. Unfortunately, one side or the other owns the power. Okay, let's talk about substitutes for a minute. Every industry has some substitute. Okay, I would think. We have sports have a substitute. You know, major leagues versus minor league baseball, for example. Minor leagues is a substitute for the major leagues in a way. IHL versus NHL on a hockey level. Okay, so in cars we don't have a lot of substitutes. We have bicycles, we have motorcycles, etc. Substitutes drive prices and profits down, and they are a large competitive threat, and that's the main issue here. Okay, just a couple notes here about rivalry among competitors. When it's high, it's awesome. It drives new product. It drives new innovation. Profits go up. Revenues go up. So do costs. But in general, it's a good thing. There's a few markets out there that are very high in rivalry. Automotive is one of them. Cell phones is another, for example. Computers, another. Lots of great new products come from it. Once again, we're looking at the example of internet rivalry here. And man, well, this is a good example of any market rivalry. And the internet is one of those key factors of what's driving rivalry among companies that are selling products that are, commoditized. Computers is one of them. You look at the influence of Amazon right now on Costco, Walmart, and Best Buy, and it's just amazing what's taking place right now in that market. Hey, just a couple notes here about low profit industries. Every company should have a mix, a product mix of some combination. Low profit participation is always going to be part of a good company strategy. We just don't want to get too far into it so that we get over our heads and we begin to lose. Okay, so this is going to wrap up segment 2 here of our chapter 2. Hey, the bottom line here is doing a good industry analysis. We have to determine what it's like on the external environment, what our customers are like, what our buyers are like, what the demographics are like that we're selling within and to and around. It's very important to understand what is happening not only today but in the future, and what these factors that line up can influence in the future. And somehow we have to do a good job of predicting it. Somehow we have to do a good job of tracking it and developing trends and trend lines so that we're somewhat educated on what's going to happen next. Okay? Understanding the Porter model is critical because we begin to develop a real good reasoning for who's in control in that industry, and it really begins to shape a logic model of profit, sustained profit. Okay? So this is a big part of our analysis, along with SWOT analysis and competitive analysis. Very critical to shaping strategies is knowing A to Z about what market you want to play in, and that's really the bottom line here.